Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome to the very first episode of Humans of Horses podcast. My name is Elle, and I'm otherwise known as the Cognitive Equestrian on Instagram. This episode is going to let you know how horses came into my life, specifically Fion, Zirconia, and Morgan. And I am going to explore why I decided to start a podcast. So without further ado, I will begin. So I've been living in the Netherlands now for 5 years. About that. No, wait, 6. 6 years. And I was, or rather still am, working as an airline pilot. And when the pandemic hit in March 2020, everything changed. And I didn't know at the time just how much everything would change. But in the immediate aftermath of everything is going to be going into lockdown, it became abundantly clear to myself and my colleagues that, well, we probably wouldn't be flying for quite some time. There was a worldwide grounding of all aircraft, and my company don't operate cargo flights. So we were subsequently grounded. Now, it was a bit weird because it all happened very, very suddenly. And I remember, because you have an app on your phone which has your schedule on it. And I remember just getting, a lot of consecutive notifications, which equated to multiple schedule changes. 1 minute I'd have a flight somewhere, and then 1 minute it was gone. And there was a lot of swinging and changing like this. And then at one point, my schedule just went completely blank. It was very, very strange. And I remember when it was all kicking off, I just kind of let myself within the first 2 weeks experience the emotions of what was happening and the implications that could be potentially coming to pass as a result of this mass grounding of all aircraft. We heard whispers about job cuts, and those did turn out to be true in the end. But we just didn't know in what way they were going to manifest and where the company was going to be making those cuts. And of course, when stuff gets out into the media, it gets blown all out of proportion and it's all sorts of nonsense. And you hear a big scary number about how many people are going to be fired from various companies, actually, because it wasn't just us. So you sort of hear the percentage and you think, oh, that's quite big. And you think, what if I'm in that percentage of people? So the way I handled it was just, I literally let myself feel everything I needed to feel within those 2 weeks. And I came to terms with what I viewed was going to be the worst case scenario, which would probably look like having to move back to the UK after having my job cut. And essentially myself and my boyfriend having to go to our respective childhood homes at slightly different parts of the UK. So we would then be long distance and probably having to find some sort of temporary job to get by. We'd only just moved in together. We'd been living together for about a year. And it felt like that could just all be taken away at any moment, because we were at the time quite junior in our organisation. So we weren't really sure what was going to happen, and that's just kind of how I dealt with the pandemic when it first broke out. And then once I sort of accepted what I viewed as the worst case scenario and telling myself that would be okay, I then just sort of got on with the pandemicness, that's a word now. And I just faced lockdown with the possibility that, well, there was zero possibility for us to work from home. I'm pretty sure if I worked from home, people would be very worried. So I initially passed the time cycling, and I remember in the April of 2020, it was just absolutely gorgeous weather here in the Netherlands. It was sunny almost every day, and it was above 20 degrees. And I think if the weather hadn't have been that nice, it would have made the first lockdown much, much harder. Because we were quite lucky here. We weren't actually limited to staying within so many kilometres of our place of residence for a certain period of time. We were well and truly allowed to go outside, and as long as we maintained our distance from other people. So I did cycle a lot, and I went all the way down to tulip fields and even a bit beyond. And then I came back. I also got into crochet. I did art because at the time I was trying to be an artist on Instagram. One of my many attempts at figuring out what I wanted to be on Instagram, one of them was an artist. And I was just trying to get into the flow there with that. And I also did this puzzle, which was of this really beautiful lion with like purple, bluey, pinky manes. And I just loved this puzzle, and it was 1,000 pieces. So it kept me busy for a little while. And then when I finished it, I framed it because I was so proud of it. So yeah, after some time, of pandemicness, because I'm going to make that a word, it became apparent to me that I was really missing animals. I grew up in a family of animals, basically. We had 2 cats, well, initially 1, and then 2 when I was a little bit older. When I was a little bit older. Then we had a couple of guinea pigs and some rabbits as well. I think we had 2 rabbits. And then we also had ponies, and, well, 2 ponies, and then my mum's sort of pony, but more of a horse to me, because I was, well, to me, at the time, I was small. I was a child, and he's kind of Fion-sized, I guess, so on the borderline between a pony and a horse. But when you're small, that's not a pony, that's definitely a horse. It's funny because Morgan is actually, she's definitely a pony. And I was walking here in the neighbourhood not so long ago, and these kids were like playing football, and she was kind of interested in seeing what they were doing, and they were interested in her, and they came up to her and they were like, "Oh my gosh, she's such a big horse." And I said, "Well, she's actually not a horse." I said, "Horses are bigger." I said, "She's a pony." They were like, "Really?" And they were like just completely amazed that horses could be bigger than Morgan, which is probably, well, most horses. Quite a lot of ponies. Wow, she's big for a pony. Anyway, so yeah, we had the 2 cats, guinea pigs, rabbits. So I grown up in that way, and because I was living in a rental flat at the time, it was not allowed to have a pet, basically, in the rental contract agreement. So to then suddenly be shut up inside my flat with no contact really with animals for a while, it was tricky. Yeah, excuse my little yawn there. I'm recording this at 7:30 in the morning on a Sunday for some reason. There we go. So prior to the pandemic, I was actually able to go home and visit my parents, and I could see my cat. Her name is Holly, by the way. Had her since I was 5. So yeah, I didn't miss animals in the same way. But then suddenly, because of lockdown, I really missed having animals in my life, because I couldn't just go home and see my parents or whatever. So I started looking for an opportunity to work at an animal shelter. I wrote a few emails and never heard anything back. So then I started to see if there were people's animals that I could perhaps take care of, like maybe walking a dog or something. And at some point, I just decided to start looking to take care of horses. And I'm not really sure why this idea dropped into my head, but I remember when I was growing up, my mum did have some people to help take care of the ponies. So I thought maybe I could offer that to someone else. So I was literally just looking for like ponies or horses to just give hay to, clean, and maybe brush them to begin with, because I wasn't really experienced at that point, and I didn't really know what else to do other than that. And that was what I was like, yes, I'm comfortable with this. I'm not really comfortable with anything else at this point in my journey with horses. So I just wanted to be outside cleaning them and giving them hay, and just not be in my flat, basically. So I started looking how to do this, and bear in mind I'm in the country where I don't speak the language, and I didn't really have many friends at the time. So I didn't really know anyone. there was an expat group and I decided to post on there. That was my first point to sort of start looking into this. And I was then directed to a specific Facebook group, which is for like verzorgers and bijrijders in Dutch. And I'm trying to think of a way to translate that, because like in English, I think we talk about loans and part loans, but it's not really a loan. It's more like, yeah, you're just taking care of them. And a bijrijder is like a co-driver is how it directly translates. But I don't think that's the correct terminology in English. But anyway, so I found this group and it was specific to my area of the Netherlands. And I knew horse riding wasn't something I was looking for, not initially anyway, because I just wanted to build up my confidence of being around horses again. And while it had been a while, when I started looking, yeah, there was just very little success. There was one girl I arranged to meet, and when I showed up there were 15 horses in the field and they were all crowding around the gate, and I just felt totally overwhelmed. There was a lot of bucking and kicking, and I was just really scared, and I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to go about being around these horses when they're behaving in this way? So, yeah. She was also saying like, oh, you have to ride every Saturday. And I thought, whoa, I have no experience. And I did tell her this. I thought, I don't think I'll be riding your horse anytime soon. And I'm most certainly not going to be doing it every Saturday because I do shift work. So I'm just very happy with feeding and cleaning them, but that wasn't really what she was looking for. So yeah, it also conflicted with me a bit anyway, because I knew that if I was going to take care of someone's horses, I might have to do things that were something I wasn't comfortable with. And I sort of had to, well, I did sort of say to myself at the beginning, yeah, okay, I'm aware this might be the case, and that's maybe just how it is, and I might just have to put up with it. So at the same time, I felt conflicted, and after I visited this girl, I was just like, okay, I don't think I can be doing stuff that's different to the way I was brought up around horses, because it would be feeling like I'm not really honouring myself or that upbringing that my mum instilled in me. My upbringing with horses had been from a place of bitless, barefoot, 24-hour day living out, and just being aware of the horse and being a responsible leader for the horse. That was how my mum passed some things on to me when I was listening, because of course I was a teenager at one point, and doing what mum does is suddenly not that cool anymore. And I also was busy being an elite athlete in a totally different sport, and I had my schoolwork, so I was quite a busy teenager and didn't have time for horses anymore, so I'd become disconnected from them. But here I was, finding them back in my life, and I realised when I met this one girl and this horse that the idea of doing more conventional things still didn't set well with me, and I wasn't going to compromise that just so that I could have contact with a horse. And at this point, I actually did give up, because I'd seen quite a lot of posts and nothing was really matching. And I thought, do they even do non-conventional stuff in the Netherlands? I have no idea. So I gave up. And then a little while later, I opened Facebook. I wasn't even looking at the group specifically. And at the top of my newsfeed was this photo of a little white horse and a little brown horse. And I began to read this description, because what caught my eye was it mentioned English. So I pressed translate, because at the time my Dutch was very limited, but I did know the word for English. And it turned out this lady was looking for someone to help take care of her horses, and she was looking for someone who spoke English, because of the course that she followed in Transcended by Kathy Sierra was in English. And I thought, well, I speak English. So I got in contact with her, and that is how horses came back into my life. I'm not going to go into the full details of my horses on here. I think I'll probably make an episode maybe about each of them in due course. But for now, that's just how horses found their way back into my lives. And since then, it's been an incredible journey, as I'm sure many listeners will relate to, that when horses come into your life, a lot of things change, both for yourself personally, who you are as a professional, and of course, who you are as a horse person. And I say the word horse person because I know there are like a million different words to describe that. And right now, horse person fits quite well in the broader sense of our relationship with horses. So this leads me on to this podcast and why I created it, or have decided to create it. I love listening to podcasts. I actually began listening to podcasts because of my horse Fion's old owner. She recommended to me initially this podcast about Harry Potter, which I used to listen to when I was driving the half-hour drive up to her horses from my home and back. And then she did tell me about Mosey Truitt's In the Spirit of Horse podcast, which I didn't initially listen to because I was enjoying the Harry Potter one so much. But when I bought Fion off her, I began listening to it, and that's how I started my journey as being a horse guardian. And I use the word guardian over owner because to me, horses are not a possession. They are an equal entity and thus should not be deemed owned. But I take care of them. I'm a steward of them, and I am their guardian. I ensure their safety and well-being is taken care of. So I started listening to In the Spirit of Horse, and I really, really loved a lot of what Mosey said. I listened to the entire series over a few months as I was going about my business at the horses, cleaning them and filling the hay nets and just hanging out, because I didn't really do anything with Fion when I first got him. And that's when I came across Brené Brown and The Gift of Imperfection. I wrote down every single book that Mosey had read that had influenced her. In one episode that she mentions this, and I then at one point, a few months later, began reading them. I started off with The Gifts of Imperfection and I started off with The Alchemist, then The Gifts of Imperfection. I've still not read every single book that is on her list. I am working my way through many books because I love books now, thanks to the horses. That's again something that they've given me. And I've grown so much from reading those, and those books have impacted who I am as a person, professionally, personally, and with my horses. So that's when shifts started to happen. And then at one point I came across Warwick Schiller's Journey On podcast, and I've been on a binge listening ever since then, and come across some fantastic people on there. And then mid last year, I attended the Journey On podcast summit in Birmingham, which was, at the time, I was going through pretty stressful personal circumstances, and I didn't necessarily realise the impact they were having on how I experienced the podcast summit itself. I was quite introverted. I didn't really interact with many people. I was kind of just happy being a silent observer, because at that time my voice had been silenced by these stressful personal circumstances. And I was sort of afraid to put myself out there and connect with other people, which I realize now when I look back on it. Because I am a very open person and love meeting people and love hearing their stories, but these circumstances had taken that away from me. They'd taken that voice and shut it down. And I realize now that I was letting that win over who I am, and it was blocking me from being who I am. So I met all these wonderful people, and after a bit of processing time, I felt called by my intuition to reach out to Tanya Kindersley and Denise Elizabeth Byron. So I started working with Tanya on writing, and that in turn helped me find my voice, and I'm now actively writing things publicly that people can read. And now, of course, I'm starting this podcast. So it's been an interesting few months, and I'm really, really, really following my intuition now and just like letting it blow and just seeing where it takes me. Like for years, I've blocked who I am as a writer because I set unrealistic standards on myself. Because I wrote this one really impactful piece about 10 years ago called What is Winning, where I reflect on what winning is, funnily enough, as someone who failed to reach their childhood goal of becoming an Olympic athlete, and reflecting on the fact that the greatest female athlete of all time at that time in my sport retired, saying that she felt she'd failed. So I was like, well, if she says she failed and she won like 1 million World Cups, Olympic medals, World Championships, blah, 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 and there's me not even having started in a World Cup, what does that mean for people like me? And that piece was amazing. I was really proud of it. But then I never really wrote anything since, and I was actually completely blocking myself. So after meeting, I'd come across Tanya on Warwick Schiller's podcast, and then after meeting her in Birmingham, I decided to reach out, and from there I found my voice. And then with Denise as well, the combination of those two consultations and working with both of them have led me to write on Substack, and it's just been flowing. And I don't know if anyone's really reading it. I don't really get any engagement on my Facebook page or on my personal Facebook page. Like, it's very limited. I don't really get much feedback on Instagram from it, but I'm just writing, and I think that that's fine. And I don't really care if people don't read it, because to me, publishing it on Substack helps with the accountability. And now on to the podcast. That was a bit of a tangent, but it is going somewhere because it all links together. And I kind of have felt for a while that I've wanted to do a podcast, because I myself have wanted to speak about my experiences with my horses and the journey they've sort of taken me on. And I am doing that through my writing. But of course, reading is not for everybody. So I was like, how else do I put this feeling and this momentum and this story out there? And then I was like, podcast. And on the side of all this, I also work for an organization called Athlete Interactions. And we also want to do a podcast. So this feeling of podcasting has been in me for a little while. And then one day, a couple of weeks ago, I just decided, hey, let's do it. I've not even planned this, by the way. I'm just literally recording and going with the flow. And here we are. So this podcast, and the reason why I'm doing it, is because I've met so many wonderful horse people, both online and personally. And often we have the Warwick Schiller podcast. We have lots of other podcasts that are done by already well recognized and well followed horse professionals, with a lot of recognized and well known horse people on there. Now, I'm not one of those people. I'm just your average, well, quote unquote, average horse lover. I'm going to go for horse lover. And I want to tell the stories of people like me, because as I said, I've met some amazing people, and I want to share everyone's story. Like, I love all of your journeys, and I want to just dive into those and put them out there for others to connect to. And from that, hopefully build a community of people who share the same love of horses and recognize the gifts that horses have given them that I have and that I've experienced. So yeah, this podcast is for you. It's for everyone. If you want to be on it, please message me on Instagram, The Cognitive Equestrian. That's my Instagram. I also have a Facebook page. All the links will be in the show description below. I will probably be also publishing it on YouTube, I think, when I have guests. I'm not going to publish a video of myself talking just by myself about things, but yeah, I'm really curious where this is going to go. You can also email me at thecognitiveequestrian@gmail.com, which will also be below. So please get in contact. I really want to hear your story, and I'm really excited about who I'm going to meet and whose stories I'm going to share as I venture on this podcast journey. I've already recorded my first guest episode, and I think to me, this really is showing me this is my passion project, because I did not stop smiling throughout the whole recording. It was just absolutely wonderful to do this, and yeah, it gave me so much joy. So I hope that you will also hear and feel that joy when you listen to it. In the meantime, give me a follow, tell my friends about this podcast. Sorry, tell your friends, not my friends. I'm telling my friends. I've got that covered. But tell your friends about this podcast, and I really, really hope to hear from you and see you all very soon.